the week. So, okay, meanwhile, a queen's pawn opening. And it's the queen's gambit.
And it's a Catalan.
It's a Catalan opening, as we saw earlier, between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. This time, black has taken a pawn very early on. We see some quick moves. This is all very well-known opening theory. This is a deep battle of homework between the two players. Black is actually a pawn up, but look at the black king in the middle. Also, white's queen, quite nicely placed. Black's extra pawn is also a doubled pawn. And, okay, black's rook coming to the side. I expect to see white's knight come out, as it has done. And, okay, Anish Giri, he is going to be one pawn down, most likely, for a while. Okay, nope, he's traded a set of knights. And look at this, lots of moves, lots of exchanges, and we see a bit of an imbalance between white's knight and black's bishop. Most notably, though, black has some wrecked pawns, some ruined pawns, especially those black pawns on the c-line. They're doubled and weak. So Anish Giri, he's given up the pride and joy of this opening, white's light-squared bishop, but he has some targets, and black needs to decide what to do. Will Wesley So offer a trade of queens? I think he has to. I think he has to. That's the main move. Only 46 games in the database, and they've all played that. But capturing the queen, not so normal. This must be some really deep opening preparation from Anish Giri, because he's about to give up a pawn. No matter which way black recaptures that queen, and no matter which pawn he takes with, he will hit the white knight. White's knight will have to move, and then look at black's rook on that open line, on the B line. It's going to go and grab a pawn. And Anish Giri, he's going to hope, he's going to be arguing that the white knight will dominate the black bishop. Okay. And Wesley chooses to capture towards the centre and liberate the light-squared bishop. Yeah, it's all about that bishop. He could have taken the other way. That would have been healthier for the pawns. But here, he wants to activate his pieces. And look at this. Black has won a pawn. Yeah. I'm curious to see what Anish Giri has up his sleeve, because the game stats are telling me that black has a tremendous record here. Lots of draws and 3 victories. No white victories whatsoever. OK, so Anish trying to fight against chess history, trying to go into a line where white's track record is not great. Does he have anything special up his sleeve, though? This is the type of position where maybe if you analyse it with a computer, maybe if you look at it with a program like AlphaZero, Lila0, they will say, long-term, white is doing great, because white has such a great knight. OK, Wesley So pushing a pawn, white's knight stepping back from its perfect outpost, but now a double attack against black's pawns. That white knight is eyeing up black's pawn on that left side, the A pawn, which moves. White's rook also has been opened up, and white is going to win his pawn back. The white knight and the white rook now on an open line have ganged up against the same pawn. Yeah, and unbelievably enough, this has all been played before. Just the one game between 2 players, and there black won. Okay, but it was a very disparate rating difference between the two. White was significantly lower. Okay, so black has great score, 100% record from this position, record, but not a great sample pool. Not too many games played in this position, and definitely Wesley So will be feeling the pressure just from the speed of Anish Giri's moves. Anish actually has more time than he started with, and it's already moved 21. So he's going to be feeling confident that he's got a line he's familiar with on the board. But Wesley now down almost 2 minutes on the clock already. Okay, will he feel the heat? How is black's bishop going to continue activating itself? How's black's remaining rook going to get in the game? A 2-minute time disadvantage on move 21. Anish, he's going to be inside, feeling super confident. Wow. Okay, it's still roughly balanced in the position, but it's about who knows it better, who understands the ideas better. And Wesley, I expect to see him maybe just move his bishop. You can move the black bishop into the centre of the board, try to trap that white king, try to remind the white king that there are some very weak light squares around it. And well, Wesley takes some time out to just give his king some air and also just defend his bishop. That's good time trouble strategy. And now the knight captures the pawn. The rook covers the e7 checking square. I wonder how Anish will fight against black's pawn there on the left side of the board, the a4 pawn, because for me that is going to be black's biggest trump. And well, there we have it. Anish pushing his pawn forward, just securing the square for the retreat square for the knight on b4. Yeah, I think more importantly, actually, just stopping the advance of black's pawn on that side. Because if white's pawn was stuck on a light square, if black was able to fix it on a light square, it would be a permanent target. the black bishop would have gone for it later on. So
I was worried that that pawn would actually step one square further earlier on in the game.
So now all of white's pawns are on dark squares. That means they're safe. They will never be attacked by the black bishop. Actually, all of white's pieces are on dark squares, meaning the black bishop is just going to hit thin air. It has no targets.
And Anish Giri is offering a trade of rooks, and Wesley says no. I mean, one thing that does worry me significantly is how little control white has over the light squares. And when you look at that bishop planted in the middle of the board, that's kind of keeping the king, the white king, under lock and key, basically. Yeah,
white's king is caged, but that is why Wesley So has kept rooks on the board, because if all the rooks disappear, white is simply winning. Black's bishop has no targets, nothing to hit. The black bishop has to keep the white king caged, but it also needs the assistance of its rooks to actually go for an attack later on.
OK, and Giri gives his king some air, but Wesley is having none of it. This is a very high-pressure move. Stepping the pawn forward, opening up the sixth row.
For his rook, yeah.
For his rook,
and also, we should mention, before this last move, there was a trap. White's rook on the C line could not get greedy and go and capture a pawn. White's rook has to maintain control over the first rank, otherwise the black rook would come down and deliver checkmate. So Wesley's actually just given up a pawn, but he's trying to get his rooks involved. Yeah, you mentioned it, Jovanka. It's starting to look scary for white. The black rooks have really found some nice posts. Yeah, and now Giri has been forced to utilise his king as a defensive piece. Because all of the other pieces are stuck on the wrong side of the board. Exactly. They can't move. But what happens here if black maybe just pushes a pawn forward? He could start trying to go for this white king. And that's what he's done. And now the big threat is actually to do what you suggested, just to give a check to the king and seemingly sacrifice a pawn. Yeah, white's king is almost caught in a checkmating net already. I don't think there's a killer blow. I don't think you can quite get at it, but certainly Anish Giri is going to start feeling slightly uncomfortable. Those two white rooks, they're just on the wrong side of the board. The white knight is actually almost in a stable, controlled by black's bishop. The white knight wants to get over, it wants to find itself on the right side near the white king, but it takes an age to do that. OK, Anish Giri finally has started slowing down on the clock as well. Only a 1 minute difference now on the in terms of time. I mean, you mentioned the knight, so I'm thinking that the white knight is the only piece that can move. It needs to defend its king. It needs to defend its king, right? Part of the reason knights exist as defenders. Yes. And, OK, black is really not hiding his intentions. He's definitely going for the white king. Again, another small trap maybe. If white's rook on the first rank on the c-file goes and takes a black pawn, then the other black rook gets active. OK, wow. He's done it. He's fallen for the trap. Is it? OK, is it terminal, though? Black's rook, maybe he's calculated that he's OK. I'm not so sure. I thought black's other rook would come down to the first rank. And, OK, look at this. Black is going for the white king. First, he stepped his rook down, cutting off the white king from ever using the fourth rank. Now, next, the black pawn is going to check that white king. OK, Wesley So attacking in an endgame. And we saw his endgame stats earlier on. It's all about this now. This is gone. Look at the white rook on the left side, on that A2 square. It's not contributing. White's knight not on the right side of the board. I mean, and the knight isn't even working. Nothing is working. And like you say, the next move that's going to happen is the pawn will step forward and give a check, drive the king back. And look at how many light squares are controlled. Yeah, and Anish Giri leaning even further forward. I think he's starting to realise the seriousness of his situation. It's dire right now, his position. What are you doing about the white king? There's too many pieces around it, swarming towards it, and no backup, no bodyguards on that side of the board. OK, it's looking like it's over already. Black's pawn simply marching forward next. The black f-pawn is going to step forward with a deadly check. And white's king will be caught. I'm stuck for a move, David. I mean, the only move that I was thinking of is just to give up as much material as possible by attacking the bishop with a pawn, allowing the rook to take. But this is just... yeah, that black desperation. Rook. I can't, because the critical threat that is on the board is that black will step forward with his pawn, give a check to the king, and just keep the king completely caged. It's really nice, the artistry that Wesley has shown by weaving this checkmating net around the white king and your move on the board, Jovanka, but this has allowed black's rook on the third rank to come across and take a pawn. And
yeah, I'm not proud of that move, but, you know,
it's necessary, maybe.
I couldn't see too many ways to hold on. Okay.
A bit of nerves for Anish Giri, his legs shaking.
Yeah.
His hand firmly on the mouse.
Earlier, he was more than 2 minutes up on the clock. Now he's 30 seconds down on the clock, and his king is almost doomed. That's a check. White's king is forced to step backwards, and then the black bishop will relocate itself, most likely. OK, this is looking really desperate. He needs to choose a square for his king. If you choose a light square, the bishop will attack you. If you choose a dark square, the rooks will come.
And the bishop has relocated itself to attack a pawn.
Yeah,
I mean, it's relentless.
Massive threat on the board as well. If that black bishop is able to go and take that h-pawn for white, it's going to be check, and it's going to be checkmate within a few moves. So Anish Giri, can he find a way, find a defensive resource, or is he going to have to lose a lot of material just to prevent checkmate, just to delay the inevitable? Anish Giri in huge trouble right now.
I mean, how to even delay the inevitable?
I don't see it.
I mean, it's just going to be death by rooks or bishops on the third row, and Anish...
He's struggling.
He's struggling, and you can see it on his face. He just cannot find a move. He has less than 30 seconds to try to pull out some miracle recovery, but we don't see it.
No, we don't see it. If white's knight, for example, goes and takes black's central pawn, then black will deliver that fatal bishop check. OK, Anish Giri preempts the check against his king by stepping back onto a dark square, trying to find safety there. But now, how will Wesley so continue the attack? I would expect the black bishop just to take a pawn.
Yep, that's what I would expect as well, because the rook is threatening to go down to the first rank and give a deadly check.
There we go.
OK, he's on the board, and Anish attacks the rook with his knight covering the critical square.
Yep, so black's rook cannot safely give a check anymore, but it will find a different angle, a different path towards the white king. So that black rook, it can just sidestep. It wants to stay on the third rank if possible. It can just sidestep to the left one square. It can go the whole way to the left. Not, as long as it's not attacked, it should be finding its way in towards the white king.
And Wesley so has just over 1 minute to make his choice. It's a pretty straightforward one. Rook must stay along the third row.
Yeah. I mean, even if it doesn't, even if it just retreats, I think black is that in control. Black's actually a pawn up and with an ongoing attack. Yeah,
but best to keep the threats alive.
Yeah, ideally. And OK, Wesley, so under the minute mark as well. Maybe some glimmer of hope.
He steps back with his rook.
I guess he didn't want to allow white's rook to find this open line, so he wants to just dominate white's rook there next to the white king. That rook is almost trapped.
15 seconds. OK, and the rook takes a step backwards, attacking the pawn on d5.
OK, so almost hopeless for Giri, but still fighting, still alive. OK, under 5 seconds, though, for him. Wesley, so moving in for the kill. Can he take that pawn safely?
Oh, I think he did have to take that pawn, OK, because now it looks awful.
Look at that white king.
I know, look at that
no
protected
safe squares to
pawn
go to.
On the third row.
All black needs to do is deliver a check, and it's game over. It will be checkmate. How does white escape from this? White's king is powerless. The black bishop now can just move, and white is doomed.
Yeah, even Houdini cannot escape from this one. I mean, just look at it. There you go.
Black rooks are about to give some checks. Black's bishop can give a check to the king as well. There we go. And Anish Giri, he's about to get checkmated. There we go. A result. Wesley so wins.
Over a loss here for Anish Giri, shaking his head. That means a